This is the Initiates podcast. I am your host and guide, Natalie Grace. Join me for an enlightening exploration of spirituality, mysticism, and awakening. It's my honor to journey with you. Welcome, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. On today's episode, I share a conversation with Evelyn Zuel. Evelyn is a writer, an astrologer, a hypnotist, and a forever seeker of the greater mysteries. She runs the Mystic Parlor, a spiritual hub in the Mojave Desert, where she conducts her sacred work and guides seekers as they journey through their subconscious to unlock past life secrets and uncover their own inner truth. Evelyn is one of my favorite mystics and creators. I've been following her online for a while now, and I love all of her work. She's such a deep thinker, and she's an amazing researcher and a really insightful human. She also posts some really fun astrological analysis of stuff that's happening in our collective societal sphere, which is always super interesting. I was so honored to chat with Evelyn, and I'm so thrilled to share our conversation here with you today. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. We cover so much in this chat. We talk about astrology. We talk about the nodal shift that's about to occur for the collective. We talk about healing and hypnosis and past life regression, the afterlife, psy-ops. It's such an interesting chat. So join me as we journey with Evelyn Zuel. Welcome, Evelyn, to the Initiates.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I've been following you a little while online, and this is the first time we've had like a proper chat, which I'm really excited about. But I think I was first drawn to you by the whole aesthetic of your creation, the Mystic Parlor, which from watching from afar has gone on a bit of an evolution. So I'd love to know about your journey to the Mystic Parlor, what it is and what you do, what your sacred mission is.
Yeah, lovely. I started the Mystic Parlor with a friend, and it started out as a retail space with the purpose of creating a place in the desert where people could come together and explore mystical topics, tarot, candle magic, and the occult. Because there currently at that time wasn't an option or an outlet for that, which was really surprising because of the draw of the desert, which is mysticism and spirituality. So I created that space, and then I had never owned a store before or even ever had done retail to that caliber. But I had a lot of fun being able to create the aesthetic or the image or the vision. My background is in photography, so with visual arts, and I drew a lot of my background to get all that set up with the website and all the marketing. And then I was subletting the space, and the second year through, the subletter wanted that space back. And so this is basically, we started right when the pandemic started, literally on the day of the lockdowns is when we had the grand opening, which was a virtual opening. And then exactly almost 2 years later, the space needed to get taken back from the original person. So I closed it down, and then in the meantime, I was always doing my astrology and hypnosis work. So I just shifted back over to what I was doing before, which is astrology, hypnosis, making birth chart prints, and then recently started a podcast. So I've been working on that, and I've just been evolving it constantly.
And what has that felt like? Has that been a creative process for you?
It is. I think that as someone who enjoys starting something new, it might be I don't know. I don't know if you'd call it an issue necessarily, but I really like starting things. I'll say that. And then it is still yet to be seen to what extent those projects get maintained. However, the whole inspiring initiation beginning part of a journey is really attractive to me. And so I think that has seeped into my style with the work that I do, which is to create something new, evolve, kind of be on the next step, to keep it interesting. I guess that's a part of my ADD brain. And then also, I have a lot of cardinal signs in my birth chart. So I think that I just enjoy the pioneering experience of creating a new journey to go on.
I love that. That's a real trailblazing kind of energy.
Yeah, it never gets old. Never gets boring. That's for sure.
While you were talking, I was casting my mind back to hang on a minute. I think I initially stumbled across you through Magic of I.
Yeah. So I've been writing for Magic of I, doing astrology prompts and articles and blog posts for maybe about 3 years now. 3 or 4 years. Yeah. I Carrie, the creator of Magic of I saw her journals and immediately fell in love.
Mm-hmm.
I was really heavy into my birth charts at the time, and I wanted to start a journal, but knew it was such a huge undertaking, and then saw her journals for astrology journals and thought to myself, well, she's doing it incredibly already. There's no need for me to go into this realm. I'm just going to be maybe a huge fan and supporter of her work. And it's funny because she said that she was going to make birth chart prints, but then saw that I was doing them already. And so she decided to pivot and do journals instead.
Wow.
So yeah. And it's just been an instant collaboration. I just really respect her work and what she's putting out there for the astrological community.
Yeah. So if you're listening and you don't know exactly what we're talking about, I'm sure you would have seen somewhere on the internet, if not on your own bookshelf, this amazing moon journal for the year that has an amazing cover, either white or black, I think normally, with this beautiful gold foil. And it's been copied so many times now, but it's just, there's nothing as magical as this amazing book. It really helped me to, I guess, become acquainted with the energies, not only of the moon, but of especially the inner planets, just being able to track them, and her way of creating these keys to explain, to make everything so simple, really complex astrological ideas so simple. And if you follow Magic of I on Instagram or you're subscribed to their newsletter, then you would be familiar with Evelyn's writings.
Yeah, I'm doing the weekly astro forecasts for Magic of I, and I was doing their Instagram posts for a while. But yeah, now doing those weeklies, which are a lot of fun and really good for me too, to keep on track with the energies that are happening. But yeah, an incredible journal. It's so in depth. She has every transit, every aspect, the breakdown, monthly, weekly, daily breakdowns. It's really an end all for any astro buff or even astro curious person.
Definitely. It's for all levels. It's great. Talking about astrology, then, I'd love to hear more about your journey and your initiation into becoming an astrologer.
Well, I've always loved astrology at a young age. I remember picking up an astrology book and reading about Libra for the first time in maybe third grade? Because I clearly was always in the library and loved the book fairs. And I remember reading, so I know this is probably now at my level, I know this is just kind of mumbo jumbo, but at the time at my age, I was really fascinated because it said, Libra, you will have a dimple on your right knee. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have a dimple on my right knee. This is amazing, my little third grade mind. And it always kind of stuck with me. And always grew up in a religious household, but never fully felt connected to the religion, but always knew I had spiritual inclinations and questions. So for me, the initiation came in when I was in my early 20s, and I was going through somewhat of a life crisis, health and life crisis. And I was dealing with extreme eczema at the time. And figuring out, it was just kind of one of those moments where I really had to change every aspect of my life in order to do the work to heal this eczema, because it was debilitating. And pretty much was just like in the shower, having like a come to Jesus moment, like, okay, if I'm going to have to deal with this debilitating eczema for the rest of my life, we're not doing this. Like, God, if you're there, if this is real, if this is, last ditch effort, like, help me heal, or I'm out of here and I'll like come back again and do it a different way. And I think around the last, like a couple of days after that, I just got the idea to start learning astrology seriously and just making it my full-time hobby. And I found a lot of answers through astrology. It helped with my healing journey. It gave me a lot of personal answers that I needed, spiritual answers to just my being as a person. It really helped validate my experiences in the world. And from then on, I just have lived by it.
Yeah, everyone's kind of initiation story is so personal and unique. And it's so interesting when it has to do with your own healing and your own, like, those kind of moments of spiritual crisis when you're like, please just like show me something, and the answers start appearing.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And it's so subtle that way. And that's how I explain it to people too who are going on their journeys or beginning, is really all it is. All it requires of you is to just ask. And it's so simple, and we don't think to ask, but really it's once you just, kind of hands in the air, ask the universe, like, help me. What do I need to know? And like you just mentioned, the answers just start kind of popping up, and you just start getting this guidance from the ethers, or, channeled directly into your brain of, maybe foods to eat or vitamins that you need or philosophies to start learning. And then it just kind of, evolves from there.
That's really intriguing. So how was it that the astrology in particular helped you on your healing journey?
So this is a little bit of a long story. It wasn't immediate. It was throughout a few years of understanding and getting like little pieces of the puzzle slowly to create a bigger image. But when I learned about, for instance, what's in astrology called the north and south nodes in our charts, which is the north and south node of the moon and their karmic role in our lives, the more I started to understand, the process of unpacking karma in this life. And I'm like, okay, so I've got Mars, the planet of war, passion, anger, external expression, on my south node of past life karma. What is that all about? I must have some karma to deal with regarding anger. So that's like one piece of the puzzle, and at one point in the journey, and then you just kind of hold on to that, lock it in, keep going, learn some more stuff. And then I ended up doing a past life regression, which helped me to see, specifically for my eczema, which helped me to see that I had died in a past life with a lot of anger and like pent up anger, and also in a house fire, Mars. And so this is another piece of the puzzle. I'm like, okay, pack it away. So now there's something that has to do with anger for me and healing my eczema. Keep on going, years down the line, I learned how to do past life regression, and become a past life regressionist. And then learn through my schooling that, wow, yes, in fact, skin issues such as eczema have to do with repressed anger. And it's just all of these little pieces as the years go by come to unfold into a bigger picture, and helped me to realize this healing journey is so multifaceted and so layered. And yeah, so that's how astrology helped me, just seeing, okay, there's a little piece of like the key is Mars for me, which is not in its a best sign. It's in Libra, and it's also connected to the South Node. So I've got some things to unpack regarding my Mars placement and what that means for me. And that's kind of how it all snowballed.
I love that astrology, like looking at your natal chart and being able to find these like directional pointers. If you're open to it and you're curious and you want to explore, that there's so many ways that you can pinpoint something that could be a rabbit hole that leads you to some really profound wisdom.
Yeah. And it's I think a process of trusting the information and trusting how it feels for you, and not forgetting. That's kind of the big one, like not forgetting that information that popped up for you. Because when I do client work, I'll they want answers. Like people want to know the full story or the full spectrum within an hour of us meeting. And I'll give them a piece of the puzzle and like, okay, now it's your turn. Like now you go down that rabbit hole and find out what that means for you, because that's a part of the whole process for us all, I think, individually, because it's more meaningful that way too, when you get to explore it for yourself and then find those answers and have the synchronicities and then have those conversations with other people that just match up, and then everything starts to click. As an astrologer, I'm just here to guide you in the right direction to get to that for yourself.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I work with the tarot, and it's kind of the same thing with these, individual readings where people usually come to you. And I think astrology is a little bit different because you can have ongoing clients that say come to you every year for a solar return reading or something like that. But with tarot, it's usually when there's a moment of crisis, or someone's bored. And there's like this sometimes, or I should say often, desperate energy to have something answered. But really what it is, or what it should be seen as, is working with someone who gives you an invitation to explore. It's like you said, here's what I can see but I only get to see one layer of what you're living. And it's the invitation for you to go deeper into your actual lived experience and unpack it for yourself.
Absolutely. Yes. And yeah, that's what we're here to do, I believe, is to become self-aware and understand the intricacies of our inner world and what makes us who we are and why we're here to begin with. And I don't think any one person could ever tell another person exactly what that is.
Yeah.
That's really up to the individual to find out for themselves, because that's the whole point. Otherwise, why even come,
Oh, totally. And I think that's one of the things we're remembering and awakening to is that our sovereignty comes from not outsourcing our power to these external so-called experts, whoever they may be, whether it's a doctor or an astrologer or a tarot reader. It's simply, yes, it might be someone very attuned and very skilled, but it's still just their opinion of what they can see from the outside of you and your like wholeness. So I think we're all starting to see these like single dimensional ways of knowing and healing and understanding life and our health and our bodies. They're starting to break down because where we're at right now, we know we need something deeper. We need something more multidimensional in order to really do the work.
100%. Yeah. And I mean, for my eczema, I don't know how many times I was told by a dermatologist to wash my bed sheets. Like,
Yeah.
and okay, bye. And that's it. Like, that's it? Like, that's all you have to tell me is take an allergy pill and wash my bed sheets every week? That's not the full picture. So when I integrated, the spiritual aspect and the health and the diet and the lifestyle, then it became much more clear of what it all meant for me. And I think it's the same for everyone on any healing journey.
Absolutely. So I'm really interested, and this is something that I love about your astrology. When I read your work, and you have talked in the past about like the importance of the North Node and South Node in the natal chart, but obviously it's something we've been like working with. We're about to go through this collective nodal shift as well. So does that also apply, that it has to do with our past lives and our like destined evolution from a personal perspective? But what about for the collective?
Ooh, I love talking about nodal shifts for the collective. It's so fascinating to watch as the nodes shift into new signs, how people's focus shifts from different interests. It's the way that I see it for the collective is, for instance, the North and South nodes have been in Taurus and Scorpio for the last year and a month or so. And I've noticed, there's more. It was a very, very apparent, of course, when it first happened, the interest in plants, the plant boom happened, and the like love for gardening and farming and the interest in agriculture and the land and beauty. I think like the beauty and skincare side just boomed and went crazy, and also art as well. We talk about, this whole progress with AI and evolution with art in the AI realm. That's definitely, Taurus. North Node represents a pioneering new perspective in whatever sign that it's in. So with it going into Taurus, it is a brand new view on art and what it can accomplish or be used for good or bad. And with the karma aspect, I think it's maybe not necessarily so focused on karma or what the collective karma is. It's so personal and individual. But it seems to show in people's charts where they're focusing on working through their own interpersonal things for themselves. So moving into Aries and Libra next month or in July is, the next nodal shift, which will be a very, very strong and potent one because it's Aries and Libra, which are cardinal signs. Whenever you have any cardinal transits, it tends to pick up the energy more quickly, and we tend to feel more, especially with Aries, more energized and reactive. So I think that's going to be interesting because North Node in Aries, from what I'm picking up so far and feeling into, is that it's going to be people's relationship to how they react to external stimuli, their instincts, their instinctual reactions. And also, since Aries is ruled by Mars, of course, their relationship to their anger and aggression, conflict resolution, confrontation. On the collective grand level, if you think of the world, if we pull out and look at maybe politics and the world at large, conflict when it comes to Mars type energies, which is military. So we'll probably see a lot of criticism of military come up, or just even people's own internal sort of questioning or curiosity around what they think about the military or how they feel about it, and opening up dialogue around what that means for each individual person. And then to the sense of individuality, moving towards independence, confidence within the self. South Node Libra. So the South Node is what we're learning to not necessarily move away from, but what we're learning to integrate in order to move towards what the North Node is trying to teach us. And it's relationships. So we're learning how to integrate our relationship to ourselves so that we can be independent within our relationships with other people. And so everyone's going to have a different experience with that because the nodes are going to be traveling through everyone's birth chart in a different house. So depending on where Aries is for you is going to bring up totally different life experiences for everybody. That depends on your rising sign and what house Aries rules.
Cool. So with someone like me, I've never asked an astrologer this question, but I'm curious. I have like a stellium in Libra, but I have nothing. Maybe some like faraway fixed stars in Aries, but Aries is really blank in my natal chart. So like, what does that mean if you've got a sign that has a lack of like planetary presence there?
Then it's going to be a whole new world for you. It's going to be a lot of new concepts and new themes that you were never really privy to, that is going to expand and open you up to a whole new version of yourself. And depending on where Libra is, do you know what house all of your Libra is in?
The second and mostly the third. Yeah.
Mostly the third. So it's communication and your way of communicating and learning, which for you makes sense with this podcast, which is collaborative, right? Mm-hmm. In conversational and sharing of ideas, blending and merging. When the North Node's in Aries for you, it's going to be realizing or learning about how to explore your own interests in an independent way that doesn't allow for or need or maybe require that collaborative process. So, I think a lot of us are starting to already feel the North Node Aries peak in we have thoughts, subconscious thoughts, or maybe we're having like little conversations with ourselves already about what we want to initiate or do more of. And, you may already have this kind of these thoughts that you have for yourself. North Node Aries in the 9th house, which is more traveling as well, more independent traveling, doing things on your own for the sake of doing them just because you're interested in it, and so that you can have the freedom to think clearly for yourself without the input of other people's opinions. So yeah, when when you have I wouldn't say a lack. It's not like necessarily a lack of any energy. It's just that, Mars is, well, you would just look to see where Mars is in your chart and then paint a fuller picture of what that ninth house means for you.
Cool. Those are some good tips. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So exciting times we're moving into. I want to touch now on the past life side of things, because you mentioned that past life regression is something that really helped you in your journey and that it led you to become a past life regressionist yourself. So what is past life regression?
So past life regression is a form of hypnosis, which is a therapeutic modality and used to help people find answers for chronic conditions, typically that have no medical basis for understanding. Or even if there is a medical basis of understanding, you can still do a past life regression to understand why you were born into the body that you were born into, in order to experience that physical reality in that way. You can also learn about relationships, what the purpose of certain relationships are. If you notice that you have a lot of patterns that reoccur in your romantic relationships or familial or just even friend relationships, those patterns can be revealed in a past life, to teach you or show you how to navigate that and learn from that karmic pattern. So it's really helpful. I think it's a last ditch effort almost for people. Like, I've done all these things. I've gone to the doctors. I've gone to all these therapists. I've gone to all these people, and I still don't have any answers. It's clearly something deeper than what modern medicine can help me with. And so I find that currently that's what a lot of people tend to go towards hypnosis for, or past life regression work for.
And can you describe how it works?
So hypnosis, the way that hypnosis works is that the hypnotist will guide you into a relaxed state where you go into a sleep-wake state. It's very similar to the state where you are just waking up from sleeping. It's that moment where you can kind of remember your dream, but it's a little foggy, or maybe you're kind of starting to lose the details of what that dream is. It's like that in-between state. And being hypnotized is not as mysterious or magical as we're kind of led to believe in popular media and in entertainment, but it's actually something that happens to us all the time. It's just being in a beta brainwave state, which is just below being awake. So when you're in the beta brainwave state, your subconscious is much more susceptible to suggestions and just your environment around you. You are conscious while you are hypnotized. That's also a misconception. You can still hear, some people depends on how deep some people go. Some people might, go super deep, but in a past life regression session, you're still conscious. It's almost as if your consciousness and your subconscious are just turned to an equal state. So they both have the same amount of volume in your brain. And the way I explain it to people, or how it's felt for me being in a past life regression, is that your conscious monkey mind is still going. Like the critical and analysis part of your brain is still working. um, your subconscious, the volume of your subconscious is just pushed up so that it has more volume and they're equal. So it almost feels like you're split. Like you can see both of your two forms of consciousness, and then your higher self is watching this happen, like this play between the two of them. You're like, whoa, like ping pong, like it's pretty wild. But the subconscious part of ourselves is the memory keeper or the record holder. And when you can access the subconscious mind, then that's where you can make a lot of really quick and radical changes in your belief system and your thinking patterns. And so that's why hypnosis is really great for like smoking cessation, for instance, or habits or fear abatement, because that's all those things are stemmed, all those habits are located in the subconscious, and the conscious mind is just reacting to the stimulation day by day. But so that's how I explain it. It's something you really have to experience for yourself to really know.
I really appreciate you going into detail, because as we were discussing in our conversations before today's chat, I have been in my past quite, I want to say, suspicious or distrusting of not necessarily, or maybe it should be hypnotists, but hypnosis more generally. And when we were talking about it, I realized it stemmed from a lot of just like pop culture, shonky, live TV hypnotists that had this like recurring kind of pattern, no matter where they were in the world, of putting people under and making the women have orgasms on stage in front of a live TV audience. That kind of like weird, unethical stuff. So I'd love to know, like, from your perspective, like how important the kind of ethics and intention when working with a client goes, especially given that sort of stain from the 90s on hypnosis in general.
Yeah, which personally I think is a psy-op to dissuade people from hypnosis, because it's such a powerful tool. And it really teaches us how strongly we are influenced and how easily our minds are influenced when we're in that hypnotic state, which, by the way, we get into very easily. You get into the hypnotic state watching TV, for instance. You get into the hypnotic state driving your car, for instance. Anything that you're doing kind of mindlessly and your mind gets to wander or drift, or you get taken out of the current time and space, basically is hypnosis. So that's my little disclaimer on that. But yes, back to your point, at the ethics of hypnosis, and this is also why I'm like kind of passionate about the fact that commercials are so non-consensual. And I don't believe that they're ethical in any way, because they know that you're already in a hypnotized state when you're watching a movie, or you're kind of engrossed or immersed in a film or TV, and then a commercial pops in to kind of infiltrate your unconscious mind and give you suggestions that you did not have consent towards, which is why we're all programmed now to see red and yellow and then have an immediate association with these symbols and words. And, you just like immediately start thinking about McDonald's or Taco Bell. And then that's a program that's been programmed within you throughout your whole entire life. But so that's why consent is very important. And I feel really fortunate that I was able to learn from teachers who understood the importance of and how delicate our minds are and how susceptible we are to suggestion, because they taught me that, when you do a past life regression, for instance, I am merely a container. I have no opinion. I am an unbiased observer. And I make sure that I exist as little as possible in your experience, because if I input any of my own personal opinions, then that's taking you out of your sovereignty for your experience. and being able to have your own, I suppose, true exploration of your unconscious mind. Now, when it comes to maybe the therapeutic parts, which is inserting positive suggestions, that's through a very deep process of consultation beforehand. So we'll have an hour-long consultation, and that's how I was taught too, was to ask as many questions as possible about the history, your personal views, what's going on with you unconsciously, consciously, what your thinking patterns are like, why you think the things you do, what you want to work on, what your interests are, what your intentions are with this session, so that I can be very specific in the suggestions that I give that are going to be just perfect and right for you. Also, too, I like to impart the idea or the notion that your unconscious mind will automatically reject anything that's not right for you. And I think that's a part of the pre-suggestions, like the pre-hypnotic suggestions, though. It's like, not all hypnotists will give you that idea, but you have to have that idea or almost that permission from the hypnotist in order for your unconscious mind to be like, oh, okay, so I can just reject anything that I don't want or reject anything that doesn't make sense for us. And so therefore, yeah, the consent around that is really important. And because we're not trying to re-traumatize anybody. We're trying to help people move through deep emotional baggage, I suppose, that's stored in the body in the most gentle and safe way possible.
I feel so much more at ease with the idea of hypnosis now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But I do want to get more of my cynicism out of the way, because another thing that I kind of wonder about, because you've said you want to be as I can't remember the exact words you used, but you don't want to be injecting yourself or your narratives into these hypnosis sessions with your clients. You want to be like, as it's about them rather than about you. And so having, say, read and listened to a bunch of Dolores Cannon, for instance, and following FFU QAHT past life regressionists, is that different to what you do? And do you have any thoughts on that kind of journeying?
It's pretty similar. The process and the system, the way it's set up, is similar. I think the techniques are a little different. And I personally have not had any sessions I had a session with someone who was trained with QHHT through the Dolores Cannon School. And I can't say that her style is exactly the way that they teach, because she had been doing it for quite some time. And so I think at that point she had evolved her own techniques. But I have had some clients that had an experience with it and said that there were some processes where they felt like maybe there weren't as much freedom for them. And again, I can't really speak specifically because I've never learned exactly what they do. So I'm not totally sure. But I do know that when it comes to the foundation of the processes, they're the similar. It's just, I think each hypnotist technique, maybe with how intrusive they go, is different.
So is the outcome like different as well? Because if you're familiar with, and you, the listeners, if you're familiar with Dolores Cannon and QAHT, there's a lot of going way back to ancient civilizations and to other planets and alien races and that kind of stuff. It's pretty way out. So, is that what we should expect from any past life regression, or is there a somewhat different intention?
I will say Dolores Cannon had been doing this work for over 50 years.
Mm.
So she has a compendium of client experiences to pull on. And she's probably pulled the most exceptional ones throughout her history as a hypnotist. So I will say that in my short period relative to hers, I have not experienced such exceptional sessions with people. And I think that she too works with certain clients where, she works with someone, she sees that they can go into certain places, such as maybe alien races or ancient civilizations. And I think she would specifically continue to work with them just for her own research purposes, which I've kind of started to do for myself as well. Or if I have a friend or a client that I'm like, oh, okay, this person is going into some alternate dimensions. Maybe this is someone that I would want to work freely with just for my own personal research reasons or purposes. And so it's not common. And also it's not common that people will go to lives where they are some fantastical historical figure. Actually, I haven't come across that at all in two and a half, 3 years at this point. Because it's all intentional around what their purpose is for getting the regression. For instance, if it's wanting to understand their relationship to their mother in this life and where it stems from, then they're going to go to a life that has to do specifically with those types of relationships. And, our guides and our higher self are going to take us places that are relevant, not for egoic purposes. So I think it is, it's all different for everyone. I have had clients that go back to really, really, really ancient times. And interestingly, the theme that I've noticed within those ancient lifetimes have a lot to do with their relationship to their independence and community. So, I think it's all very different for everyone where they go, but often it won't be. I've had one person go to like a fairyland.
Oh.
But I think that was, and then our subconscious and our guides are also particular too. Like, they went to the fairyland because it was more comfortable for them to go there before going to the life that we had to do the work with. So yeah, there really is no kind of textbook guideline for this work.
Yeah, got it. So it's more like, obviously, if you're seeking someone out to do this work with, such as yourself, you have an intention about what you're wanting to seek, and that's going to inform where you'll go. And you're basically going to be taken exactly where you need to be to understand that issue at a deeper level.
Yeah, absolutely. You can definitely do it out of curiosity and see. And your intention could be, which was one of mine in one of my regressions, is to see the afterlife and just to see what happens with the soul when you go beyond. If your intention is to want to connect with alien life forms, then, that's where you'll go.
It seems really similar to the Akashic records. And I mean, lots of people hope to see themselves as Cleopatra, but you're probably going to be shown something much more mundane that's much more relevant to you and what you're needing to hear at that time.
Yeah. And especially when it's very practical, like a practical reason why they want to do the regression. I've noticed that the lives that they go to almost mirror, parallel their life on this earth now, which is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, that is fascinating. So do you feel okay with sharing what some of the stuff that you saw or learned about the afterlife?
Yeah, I love talking about this. It's so wild. So let's see. I went to a life. I died, and then I got taken up into the sky, which is, these are all kind of very standard things that happen. Go up into the sky. I end up in an Orphic egg. And while I'm in this Orphic egg, I see a line of deities, like miles and miles, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of deities, all lined up. And then a pair of hands come down and grab me. And I feel like I'm basically in a cradle. And I get this sense of a masculine and a feminine energy, very, very strongly equal. And then just a really powerful sense of belonging and acceptance and comfort. And then after that, which I'll explain to how this links up with sort of mystical studies on the afterlife. But then I go into the void, which is also very common for almost every single regression that I've ever done. Everyone goes into a black void, and it's called the void, and we call it the void. It's nothing. It's expansive. It's for miles and miles and miles, nothing, black. But it doesn't feel scary, and it just is, you're just floating there, and it's very calm and still and quiet. And then in this void is when things start to pop up. This is when, kind of the imagination brings you into different spaces. And so after being in this void for a long time, I start to see stars. I start getting taken into a space where I see a classroom. I feel like that's also a very common symbol or archetype too. Go and see a classroom. I see everyone in little clusters. So it's like everyone has like a table that they're all sitting at together with a little cluster, and they're all learning something together, and they all have a teacher. And so it's a big room. And I guess these little clusters are kind of like maybe soul tribes, or people who are all learning the same lesson together, or they're in the same class, I suppose. And then I got taken to a space where I saw this web, like a sheet of space-time with all of these little orbs of like souls that were being developed. And I can imagine it in my mind. It's hard to explain, but it's almost like a wave of a wall, like a wall that's wavy and kind of like a grid. And then all of these little orbs where souls are just kind of being developed. So going back to the space where all of the deities were that I saw, I explained all this to my friend who, she's she's also an initiate and has been learning about, spirituality for a long time. Was like, oh my gosh, that sounds like one of the bardos in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, where in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, there's multiple levels of existence outside of this third dimension. And one of them is the bardo where all the deities exist. And I was like, wow, that's so fascinating. because I saw all of them all there hanging out. And it was almost as if they were all waiting in line to talk, like to either, I don't know, impart their archetypal wisdom on me, or just, their perception of reality, or I don't really know, to be honest. But in the moment, I was like, oh my God, they're all false idols, and was having kind of a bit of a existential crisis for my own spirituality of like, yeah, all these deities, they're all lined up. They're all in the same space. They're all in the same playing field. Meanwhile, I get this like, godlike, omniscient figure come down and pull me up into an even higher realm, which is this masculine, feminine, mother-father figure, which is the real source. And so then I kind of had this like, oh gosh, and at the time I was doing a lot of work with different deities like Kali and, Maya and all, all the Greeks, and all the Egyptians. And so I think for me in that moment, I kind of was like reconsidering my spiritual practice because of that.
Wow, that sounds so powerful. And like that must have had such a huge impact on you, like your energy and your wisdom in yourself going forward after that.
I think so. I hope so. I think so. But I think after that, my desire to work with deities subsided a bit. And yeah, now it's not so much focused. My spiritual practice isn't so focused on, working with goddesses as much as it used to be, which is like the first time I'm ever kind of pronouncing this to the public, actually, because I used to be, just so avid with deity work. That now it's not so prevalent. It's just not as important as it used to be, which there's nothing wrong with working with deities. And that's like a whole other topic of conversation. Yeah. But I have no bias or opinion about it, but for other people. But I just have noticed I'm not as interested, I guess.
Do you think that's because you got to meet them and they received you, or was it because they were at a lower plane than the true kind of creator source? Or have you been able to put your finger on why that is?
Well, in the moment, in my mind, I was kind of screaming, holy cow, look at all these false idols.
Mm.
And I didn't want to have that thought penetrate into my mind. Like I didn't want, that's not who, I did not believe that at the time, but it just kind of popped into my brain. And I don't necessarily believe that they're all false idols, but, and I do believe that every deity holds an energetic pattern that is useful for humans to work with based off of their own personal exploration and journey with their spirituality. Maybe for me at the time, it was to show me that it wasn't something that I had to focus on or work with anymore, that maybe I could connect with the higher source energy directly without having to go through other archetypal energy forms, which is, I see deities as just energy patterns.
Yeah, they're all like different facets or faces of that source energy, right? So I can totally see how after you engage that source energy that you know those facets deeply enough because you've received it in its whole that you might not feel so compelled to do that kind of devotional practice with the facets anymore. That makes so much sense to me.
Yeah. And I think for me, it makes things more complicated.
Yeah.
When it's like the energy of the source of the omniscient masculine, feminine was just so simple.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've got nothing against that kind of devotional practice either. I think it's a really useful way to learn and embody archetypal energies in that way. But yeah, it can be really fun and really interesting and provide lots of really good structure to your spiritual practice. But I think we shouldn't ever feel like we're tied or indebted to any particular type of devotional practice. Like, our journey is always evolving, and where it's totally okay for us to change how we do things and what we're praying to.
100%. Yeah. And I had again, it was contradictory to my spiritual practice at the time. So I didn't want to believe that, or I didn't want to have that consciousness, but it just entered into my brain. And because I liked working with deities. I loved working with Athena, and I don't know if anyone loves working with Kali, but I was working with Kali, and it was very helpful. And also, the planetary energies as well. So yeah. And I think, I do still suggest it to some clients too. If I see in their chart, for the Mars situation, again, anger and aggression, right? Like if I see maybe there's a imbalance for someone energetically in one way or the other, I can say, maybe seek out archetypes or deities, gods or goddesses that represent that energy, and then learn about them or try to integrate their wisdom into your practice. And yeah, I agree. You don't have to do it for the rest of your life. It's just however long you need it for. And then you can move on and then go on to kind of the next energetic lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like anytime we receive a kind of kernel of truth and we don't want to accept it, it's usually a really powerful portal for transformation.
Yeah.
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 On that note, I want to explore. So we've talked about past life regression in your own healing journey and how it's helpful for healing patterns in your clients that you work with. What about fears?
Yeah, fears are very common. Fear is interesting because what I've learned through my hypnosis, not practice, but schooling or education, is that fear is a product of shame. It's a deeply rejected part of ourselves. And to integrate that is a process of looking at what it is that you're rejecting and why. And so past life regression, hypnosis in general can help with that. You don't even really need to go into a past life. You could, for instance, maybe that would be more of a age regression situation where you would go into the first moments where you felt the instinct to reject whatever it is that whatever shame that you were feeling. So fear tends to be sometimes a karmic thing from a past life. I think it's common that that's how karma works, right? You have either this integrated karmic baggage, as I'll call it, and it comes into this life. And oftentimes early on in life is when we're met with that karmic baggage because it's so fresh for us. So usually in childhood is when we're working on the same karma that we had in a past life, in a most recent past life experience, or a most potent past life experience. So I think you can do either way, either or. You can either go into a past life, find out what that is, or you can do an age regression into childhood.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
one thing that you mentioned before that I love talking about, I don't do it much on this podcast, but psy-ops.
Hmm.
Knowing hypnosis, and you already mentioned that commercials are a really kind of insidious sort of psyop that exists that we're all privy to if we watch TV or movies. Are there any other like obvious or kind of famous sort of psyops that you're aware of that use hypnosis?
Ooh, I've been trying to figure that out. Um, if it's not just a general way in which marketing and advertisements are used against us, um, it's I really think it's mostly that. That's kind of the biggest way that hypnosis is used to manipulate our unconscious minds. I think that the psyop when it comes to hypnosis is the propaganda that hypnosis is a silly, entertainment tool for stage hypnotists, and that there's no deeper therapeutic purpose for it because it's been proven all the way back in the 50s that hypnosis is a proven tool to help with anxiety, depression, various sorts of psychological issues, like everyday psychological issues, OCD, smoking habits. It's been proven. It's already been proven. And so to me, the psyop is to present hypnosis as this wonky, silly, non-serious tool that is just for entertainment and nothing else. Because, yeah, like you're saying, in the 80s and the 90s, it kind of became more prevalent when it was being studied. Like Freud was studying it, Jung was studying it. It was studied in the early 1900s. So it's not a new thing. And it's been proven time and time again scientifically that it helps with various ailments, IBS, for instance, chronic pain. It's used for cancer patients with pain management. It's used even in dentist offices for patients who are not able to use anesthesia. You can hypnotize somebody to go through a dental procedure without anesthesia and they won't feel pain. Even for people who cannot get put under, have to be hypnotized or use hypnosis for surgeries, which, that's definitely out of my wheelhouse. Maybe at some point I'll be able to get to, to that level with the more practice that I have. However, it is proven that it works for those things. So it's just so mind-boggling to me, or it's not mind-boggling, but that's the way I've seen hypnosis used as a psyop against the public, because when you learn hypnosis, you can do it on your own. Like, it really is just training your mind how to get into a relaxed, calm state, which is the beta brainwave state, so that you can navigate your circumstances much more in tune and in alignment with your unconscious mind, and have access to that information and the deeper aspects of your mind. It's like using more of your mind, basically. Yeah. So that's how I see it. That's why I think it's a psyop, like all these stage hypnotists out there discrediting hypnosis.
Absolutely. And do you think or know that while that stuff was happening, the military and their, huge big budget what do you call it, like experiments and investigations were playing with hypnosis?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. They were definitely using hypnosis as a tool to, the military uses hypnosis for their veterans and for their military, and currently. and for therapeutic purposes. And also, to what extent, I don't know, for undercover purposes, but I know that they've been experimenting with hypnosis, as I mentioned, in the 50s with the government program called MK Ultra, and it has since evolved into various other things. But that's how they know that all of these, weapons. So what is it? Audio weapons and like laser beam weapons that can penetrate the unconscious mind work. That's how they know this stuff works. So, back in the 50s, during this project called MK Ultra, they were testing subjects to find out how they could essentially create a superhuman or a super soldier. They wanted to be able to create or utilize hypnosis as a tool to bypass the conscious mind so that they can talk specifically to the unconscious within any given person, which would then give them, if under interrogation, for instance, hypnotize someone and try to get the answers that they need. It didn't work necessarily like that. It didn't work to the extent that they were wanting it to. For instance, like I mentioned, under interrogation, because the unconscious mind at some point will block things. But however, through their experimentation with hypnosis, they've figured out how to split the conscious mind into multiple different personalities and create kind of people with multiple personality disorder, essentially, so that they can have different, you can have someone do an egregious act without their true self coming in with their own morals and values to dissuade from the project or the mission. Yeah, that's a whole other topic. I did do a talk on that I go much more deeper with my co-host Ashlyn on YouTube.
Oh,
so if you want to find that on the Mystic Parlor YouTube channel. And then I'm going to also do another one on that because it's such a rich, deep, insidious history of the United States that I think really needs to be talked about. Also, I will just add to, sorry to keep it going, but there's a documentary that I recommend everybody watch called Century of Self. It's a 3-part BBC documentary which explains the evolution of propaganda and marketing in the United States and Europe. And they talk about how Freud's nephew was essentially the head of all of the marketing that we see now, with his research in his uncle Freud's unconscious studies. So he used his uncle's unconscious studies to come up with better marketing techniques and tactics.
Yeah, I've seen that, and it's really enlightening. I encourage everyone listening to go watch it if you haven't seen it. It's really cool. I'll definitely put links to the stuff we're talking about in the show notes to make it easy for you guys to find. But one last question on that, on the more conspiracy side of things. You talked about MK Ultra and the way that hypnosis can be used against us in relation to marketing and advertising. Do you see, because when we think of MK Ultra, we think of like celebrities who are being used up by, say, the Hollywood machine and used for specific purposes. Do you see hypnosis or hypnotic kind of energy in any of the like Hollywood kind of content?
Oh, I mean, every performance is a hypnotic performance. I don't know if people remember Astro World, the very unfortunate event where many people lost their lives. The stage setup and decor, they had like a spiral spinning in the center of the stage on a big screen. They had pyrotechnics going off and just kind of droning music, which that type of music is meant to get you in a hypnotic state because of its droning, kind of repetitive beats and lyrics. And so I think every single like high, how do you say, the high performance of like, the lights, the fantasy, the, all of the flashing lights and like hypnotic sort of spectacle that goes on is, in a sense, putting you in a hypnotic state. I just read an article recently about how a recent Taylor Swift concert, all of these people on TikTok or whatever social media they were communicating on were saying how they completely lost time during that concert and they couldn't remember anything. They don't remember the beginning, the middle, and the end. And all they remember is walking out of the stage, walking out of the arena. And multiple people, this is very recent, people were making the same claims. And I'm like, well, yeah, because they were under hypnosis. That's one of the side effects of hypnosis is lost time, memory loss, and a state of dissociation. So it happens all the time. And, movies hypnotize us and can infiltrate our unconscious minds by, of course, injecting their opinions and beliefs and values. So it's ever since learning about hypnosis and how sensitive our unconscious minds are, I've become so much more guarded with what I receive.
Yeah, I'm so with you. And I'm not even like a student or practitioner of hypnosis, but having just like observed the impact that certain content on TV, films, definitely. I've had like, even the other day, I hardly ever watch films anymore. And I decided to watch a couple of films just on the World Movies channel. And one was about a father. And it was specifically about the appearance of a father, a guy who like a woman whose husband died. And then she found a guy. It was tragic the way he died. And she found a guy that looked exactly like him. And so she kind of started stalking him to go into a relationship with him. And this is going to sound really crazy, but I was just like, oh yeah, this is why I don't watch this stuff anymore. I was going into meditation that night and I was doing like a gratitude meditation and I was calling in, the image of my dad. And I swear to God, it was like a Viewmaster, those like toys where you click it and then another picture comes in of the man from this film. And I was like, I don't want to look at that guy. I don't want to think about that guy right now. He's not even real. But the power of the story and the visuals and the emotional reaction that films are trying to elicit in us, it is so incredibly powerful. And I was just like, I know now why I kind of cut off that kind of content from my life.
How many times have you watched a movie and then had a dream about it?
Yeah.
Because that's in your unconscious mind, and your unconscious mind is working through the imagery and the experience in dream time.
Ooh, I have one more question before we finish up because I know we're getting close to our time, but is there a way to like clear your cache and get rid of all that junk so that it's not kind of polluting our like the stuff that we really want to be like filling our field?
That's such a good question. I feel like, the first thing that comes to my mind is grounding. For some reason, and maybe this is, I don't know, coming from somewhere, but grounding is a form of releasing pent up or built up energy in the etheric body into the ground. So just standing on the ground barefoot, like on a sunny day, and kind of recharging your battery or recalibrating your battery that way, because our bodies we're batteries. It's essentially what we are. We're receivers, and we have a positive and negative charge, receive the energy from the sun in the top of our head, and then we release the energy through the bottoms of our feet. So I think if you go out into just outside, stand on the ground on a sunny day, visualize the sun coming down through the crown of your head and flushing your body through, and then releasing it out all into the ground. And you can even do maybe an affirmation or a mantra for yourself that is, whatever is not mine melts away. I release all others' will out of my being. Any imagery, thoughts, or ideas that do not belong to me or are not a part of my higher purpose are now exiting my being. So you could do some sort of practice like that, and it will help. The whatever's not mine melts away is like icing on the cake. It's so great. It works very effectively.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I want to add too that like we're given this stimuli, like the vision and the sound in our little boxes when we're not outside just taking in all that nature is. It gives us the vision, it gives us the sound, but the difference in nature is that there's no malice or ill intent. The trees aren't trying to program us, they're just there to share this experience and like give us oxygen so we can live. So it's a very powerful thing to even be consciously thinking about how often we want to disengage from the natural world and fill the gap with this kind of content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And nature is the ultimate healer in all ways for us. And so I think just connecting with that and making a clear intention that that's what the purpose is. And I know it sounds, some people would prefer to have a very specific or like go to a Reiki healer and do this, or a shamanic soul retrieval or something, but it's not even, it's not even that complicated. You really just have to make the intention that at this point in time right now, whatever has infiltrated my unconscious mind is no longer welcome. And it just really is as simple as that.
I love that. That's like a mantra to sage your field. It's great. Cool. I think what we've covered today is really cool because we obviously talked about the really incredible, empowering aspects of hypnosis and past life regression when we are using it to empower ourselves and heal ourselves and learn about ourselves and uncover our own truths. But then also building an awareness for how this like mind state can be used against us to program us with stuff that doesn't serve us. So while we kind of were talking about the more negative aspect in the last part, I think it's been really important for us to just hold that awareness that our kind of energy and our like subconscious is precious, and it's part of our job to like keep it kind of clear and healthy, just like all the other aspects of our bodies and ourselves.
100%. And if you're a Beatles fan and know anything about what John Lennon talked about, was how the imagination is so integral to the creation of our own reality, and that whatever you focus on will create your third dimensional existence. So being extremely intentional with what you allow into your unconscious mind, and your conscious mind too, is really important.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's part of the huge psy-op, to drain our energy so that we're not spending our time imagining. We're just spending our time like rehashing this content we've consumed. So I love that you are finishing up with that. It's so powerful.
100%. Yep, absolutely.
Cool. Okay. I know you offer so much stuff. So if you could talk about your services and your offerings, if people want to work with you.
Yeah. So I do past life regressions, age regression, hypnosis, smoking cessation, hypnosis for anxiety, depression, or if you just want to work with me on a continual basis for overall well-being, and also astrology. Of course, astrology birth chart readings, solar returns, Saturn returns. I do astrocartography as well. Really the gamut of either astrology or hypnosis. And then I make birth chart prints, which is available on Etsy, which is just a really pretty printout of your birth chart. And they make really good gifts for your astro friends. And you can listen to my podcast on Spotify, and it's now on Apple under the Mystic Parlor, as well as YouTube, which I put up monthly astro forecasts with my co-host Ashlyn from Muse House Retreat. And yeah, those are the things I've got in the works. I think, I'm not sure when this will air, but on June 22nd, I'm doing a live hypnosis sound bath at the Joshua Tree Retreat Center out here in Joshua Tree. That if you're in the area, you can come, and it's going to be a sound bath under the stars outside in the beautiful Mojave Desert. And we're going to integrate the energies of Mars and Venus, and the Cancer solstice season.
That sounds so beautiful. I wish I lived closer to you, not on the other side of the world, so that I could attend that. It sounds amazing.
Yeah, it should be a really special event.
And am I right in also mentioning that you have a skincare brand?
I worked to collaborate and co-create this brand. It's an astrological based skincare line, Once in a Pink Moon. And that is all, there's 12 products, one for each zodiac. And each of the products, either a face wash, lotion, or essence, is designed with herbs and plants that are associated with the sign.
Amazing.
Yeah. So someone should find something for them. Anyone can find something that works for them.
Absolutely. Oh, you're a busy woman. This is great. And if people want to follow you on social media, where do they find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Evelyn.Zuel, and the Mystic Parlor, and on all the Spotify and YouTubes that I mentioned.
Yep.
I think that's all I've got. Yeah.
That's enough.
Yeah.
I'll definitely grab all those links from you and pop them in the show notes so people can find you. It's been a pleasure and an honor to chat with you, Evelyn. And yeah, thanks for coming on the podcast.
It's with you as well. Thank you so much. I've been following your podcast as well since it came out, and was really intrigued with the content that you're doing. And yeah, really thankful that you invited me on to have a chat.
Oh, that's so sweet. And everyone go and listen to the Mystic Parlor podcast. It's really great. I'm sure you'll really like it. Thank you, Evelyn.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
How good was that chat? I hope you enjoyed it. As mentioned, I've put all of Evelyn's contact details, all her links, all her offers into the show notes so that you can go follow her and check her out. And like I said, go listen to her podcast. It's excellent, especially if you're into psy-ops. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with your friends, leave me a rating or a review if you're on Apple Podcasts, and let me know what you think. You can also chat to other initiates like you in the Initiates Telegram chat. We love to unpack episodes in the chat together as a group. So if there's any topics we covered that you'd like to discuss, come join us. We'd love to talk to you. Thanks again for joining me. And until next episode, peace and love, my friends.